Welcome to this Level 3 Synoptic revision course. We have still quite a few people missing, so there might be people that do come on and join us. So I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Rebecca Empson. I am a first intuition tutor at Chelmsford. Quite a few of your names I do recognise, so it's great to see that you've come and joined us for this Level 3 Synoptic revision course. But if you haven't met me before or studied with us before, welcome. It's lovely to see you joining us onto the call. So the whole idea of this course is that we are going to try and do a nice little snippet of revision, so 1 hour on Wednesdays for the next 5 weeks, where we will go through a couple of questions, a little bit of a quiz, just for a little bit of fun, and also we're going to go through a spreadsheet. So hopefully you've all received the pre-work. If you haven't, don't panic. I'm going to send it to you all in a moment when it is relevant. Just wait to see if more people do join on the call, and we're going to go through it together. And if you have any questions after the session, this is being recorded, so it will get sent out to you tomorrow, because apparently we are now going on YouTube, which is exciting and petrifying at the same time. But the link will be sent out to you tomorrow, also with the answers as well. So you will get a chance to be able to look at those in your own time and contact me if you've got any questions. Good. Now we've only got an hour, so I just want to make sure that we make the most of this hour. So what I'm going to ask you to do first is if you can just pick up your mobile phones. And we are going to start off with a quick little Menti quiz. Now you may or may not have used this before. If you haven't got a phone or any way to log in, don't worry. You can just watch on the screen. It's all going to go on the screen. But if you do go to www.menti.com and pop in the code 90, 34 and 59, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a little quiz around ethics. So we're going to make sure that we always start off with a quiz with ethics in this session to make sure that we don't just look at the spreadsheets. It's very important that we make sure that we equally look at ethics and the spreadsheet sections. So I want to make sure that we do a quick little quiz at the beginning of each session, just around a couple of different ethics questions, so that we can see how we get on with that. So I'll just give another minute just for people to join. If you are late joining, or you don't have a phone, you can play along on the screen, so you'll still be able to do that. So if you haven't used Menti before, what it's going to do is it's going to pop up with a question. If you get the answer right, you get points, and you get more points if you answer the question quickly. So we'll just take another few seconds just to get people to join, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at this ethics quiz and see how we get on. You don't have to use your real name, nothing offensive would be appreciated, but you don't have to use your real name either. Good evening, Ingrid. Welcome into our Level 3 Synoptic revision. Good, looks like we're stopping at about 35 people, so it's okay that not everybody's joined, it's absolutely fine, you can still play along. What we're just doing for those of you that are just joining is we're starting off with a quick little quiz on ethics, and we'll always start off with one of these so that we can make sure that we don't neglect the ethics part of the syllabus. After this, I'll just do a little overview of the whole syllabus for those of you that aren't necessarily very familiar with it, and then we'll have a look at our spreadsheet just to give people a chance to join in if they haven't already come in. Perfect, let's have a start then. So first questions, if you look at your phone screens, the questions should be popping up on your phones. So members should be fair in what they do. Members should not allow any prejudice or bias to influence the work they are doing. What is that describing? Integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, or professional behaviour? You had 30 seconds, we've got 11 seconds left to answer. So if you don't know, have a guess. If you haven't logged in, you can reply in the chat box, but obviously try and wait to give everyone a chance to answer because they can see your answer. But you're absolutely right, spot on. It is objectivity. So if you have gone for integrity, there is a little bit of overlap between them, but we will see that actually that is the description for objectivity. Hopefully you're all familiar with those when I talk about those ethical principles. And if you're not, make sure that you pop them on your revision list before you actually sit your exam. Good. So well done, those 20 people. What we're now going to see is that we actually have a leaderboard over on our next page. So if you've answered quickly, you get more points. And if you've answered correctly, you get points as well. So Becky, well done for being the fastest. That's going to mean that you're going to sit at the top of our leaderboard at the moment. Well done. Perfect. Let's see if you can stay up there. We've got 4 more questions to go through. So let's have a look at our next one. Sticking with our ethical principles then. So again, this is another description of an ethical principle. Members should respect all information given to them by clients or employers and should not disclose any details of their work or findings. Which one of our ethical principles is that explaining? So if you are writing in the chat box, try and give people a chance to answer before you do answer, because obviously then they could just copy your answer, but you are actually absolutely right there. So everyone's voted. Let's see how we got on. Good, perfect, full house there. So that's fantastic. All of us are picking up on confidentiality. Good stuff. So confidentiality is one of the most commonly tested of our ethical principles in the synoptic exam. So do make sure that you are comfortable. How happens that? Have you logged in on your phone, Ingrid? You logged in on your phone, because you did need to actually log in on another answer. So that's okay, just play along on the screen. So you're not going to be able to click on the screen because it's actually on a separate section. So when we play along next week, you just need to go to this website, www.menti.com, and pop in this code and you'll be able to play along. But it's okay, you can just answer in the chat box or on a piece of paper today. The most important thing is that you're happy with the content rather than actually playing along on the screen. Good, let's have a look at how that affected then our leaderboard. Oh, perfect. I know Zoom's new to everybody, but you will pick it up. It is quite easy to pick up. So we'll be using it for the next few weeks, and you can obviously let us know if you've got any questions. But well done, Becky, fastest again. So she's staying at the top of our leaderboard. Let's see if you can keep it after question number 3. So question number 3, again, we're talking about our ethical principles. If you are in Zoom, great. If you're not, you can write it in the chat box or just answer yourself and see how you get on. So members must refrain from undertaking or continuing any assignments which they are not competent to carry out. Which ethical behaviour then is that explaining? So you've got 15 seconds to have a look. Either answer through Menti, but if not, it's absolutely fine to play along at home. The most important thing is that you are comfortable with these ethical principles and this information. Amazing, good, and thank you there for our guys waiting till the end to actually pop those answers in. That's much appreciated. It gives everybody the chance. So professional competence and due care, you're absolutely right. That means that you make sure that your accounting knowledge is up to date. So you shouldn't be carrying out a tax return if you haven't got the most up-to-date knowledge to be able to do so. Professional behaviour hasn't come up yet, so I won't go through it quite yet, just so you can make sure that you can recognise that description. But it is slightly different, but professional behaviour is making sure that you always represent yourself as an accountant. So making sure you don't discredit the profession. But well done to those 37 people. Let's see how that affected our leaderboard then. Charlotte's the fastest this time, but it looks like Becky stayed at the top. So with 2 questions to go, let's see if you can hold on to that. Good, perfect. Question number 4 then, again around our ethical principles. Which ethical principle is this describing? So members should act in a manner which is consistent with the good reputation the profession has developed. So which one? Remember, we've already seen 3 of them, so there is 1 question for each. So objectivity, confidentiality, professional behaviour, integrity, or professional competence and due care. 6 seconds to go. Oh no, Sarah. Perfect, so 40 people getting that question right, absolutely spot on. That was what I was just mentioning before. So professional behaviour is making sure that as an accountant, we need to act in a professional way as an accountant and making sure we always represent our companies that we work for, the AAT and the accounting profession as a whole. Super, so well done to everybody who got that one right. Let's have a look how it affected the leaderboard then. Well done, Elle, for being the fastest, and Charlotte. You must have had the same time. It must have been spot on there, but Becky's still retaining that top title. So with one question to go, let's see if she can stay at the top throughout the whole thing. So last one. There is one left, but let's see if we can pick it up from our description. So members should be straightforward and honest when doing work. This applies to all professional, business, and personal relationships. So what is the one that describes this then? So our one that's left really, but also let's see if we can pick it up from looking at those descriptions. So you've got 10 seconds to go on this then. Super, well done to those of you in the chat box and to those 37 people that got this right. Absolutely. Integrity, it's that straightforward and honest, which is the big tip there for you to pick up. So making sure that you're not lying, panicked and picked the wrong one. That is part of exams, isn't it? That exam pressure that you go through. Menti doesn't help with that, but it is just a little bit of fun just to get us into it. So you're absolutely right. Members should be straightforward and honest. So they should make sure they're always truthful with their clients and they give them all of that information. Let's see what happened to the leaderboard then. So let's see if Becky was able to hold on to that top spot. So have a look at the points. Elle's the fastest again, well done. And well done, Becky, you kept on to it. That's really good. It's always sad when you get pipped at the post at the last possible minute. So that is just a little bit of fun. And what we will do at the beginning of each of these sessions is we will just do a quick Menti around ethics. So it's quite good. I'm really glad that you did enjoy that because I really enjoy them too. It's just a nice way for us to introduce the session. So at the beginning of each session, we will just have a quick Menti on ethics because it's difficult for us to do it really quickly. And it's just a quick way for me just to pick out 5 questions just to see how your knowledge is getting on. So all of these are around your ethical principles. But what I will do is I will from now on just pick from any part of the ethics, just 5 questions. So do make sure that you are carrying on practicing those as you go through. So that's great that you did think that ethics could be fun. And even if you didn't join in and you could just do it on your screen or through the chat box, it's still obviously a way that you can still test your ethical knowledge. Good. So before we do go through our spreadsheet, I just wanted to really quickly show you something that I've now lost on my screen. There it is. I just wanted to talk to you quickly about this overview for level 3 synoptic. So anyone who's recently been in my classes, you would have seen this. But I know that I've got quite a lot of people on the call that have actually just started their studies, or perhaps they've only done a couple, or they're studying at home. And the whole idea of these sessions are to really help you get up to date to get ready for the exam. So just as an overview, I will send this out to anybody who's registered on the call. This is what you're looking at the whole level 3 synoptic. So there's 3 elements to it. There's the spreadsheets element, there's the ethics element that we've started practicing, and that's how we're going to do it in these sessions. And then there's the recap that comes from your 3 key modules. So your advanced bookkeeping, your final accounts prep, and your management accounting costing. Now, what I've done here is I've just taken an estimate of the kind of things that could be tested easily with a spreadsheet. Now, I'm going to pick one of these each week to prepare your spreadsheet. I'll then send out the pre-work. Now, I do know there's a lot of people this evening that registered late this afternoon, so probably haven't had a chance to be able to do the pre-work, but that's fine. We're going to be able to go through it together. But I'm going to pick a different one of these topics each week to prepare a spreadsheet that we can then do a debrief on together. So what I'll do in a moment is I'm going to actually complete that spreadsheet while it's recording in front of you guys, and you can ask me in the chat box if you have got any questions. Just to let you all know, when it is recording, if you do send a message, that message will also be recorded. So I know for most people that's not a problem, but just obviously be aware if you are going to write in something on there that you wouldn't want to be recorded and sent out to anybody else. So hopefully that's useful to some people. I'd love to go through it in more detail, but we've only got an hour. So if I do send it out and you have got any questions on it, you will have my email. You're absolutely welcome to contact me, and I'm happy to go through that with you. Now, what I'm just going to do, just in case you haven't received the file as part of your pre-work, I'm just going to attempt, and this is my first time at doing this, I'm just going to attempt to send it on the chat box. So I think hopefully that may have sent. So if you haven't already received it and you do want to open it up while I'm going through it, I'm hoping that that was actually come through to you all that you can. But if not, you can just follow through on the questions that I'm going to go through, and then later on you can do this for homework in your own time. Does anyone have any questions at this point before we start to have a look at the spreadsheet, or are we happy to move on to having a look at that spreadsheet? Amazing, super, good. So hopefully everybody's really comfortable. So just to let you guys know, these are things that I'm writing. So I've run out of content with my class that I've been going through, because obviously by now they would have normally set the exam. So every single week I'm going to pick one of those topics and I'm going to write them for you. I'm going to try and get them as close to exam standard as I possibly can. But they're not going to be as big as exam standard, because obviously in the exam you've got 1 hour and 45 minutes to do the spreadsheets, and we only have an hour, and I need to make sure that we look at the ethics and the spreadsheets. So they will be exam standard for the amount that we do, but obviously in the exam you're going to have to do a lot more information to be able to actually pass this exam. But I do think they're exam standard, and I do think they are as difficult as exam standard, and they should give you a nice amount of practice. If you are a first intuition student, you've got lots and lots of practice on your Rogo. So you've got lots of information there that you can go through. But if you're not, obviously, you've got to think, did I post the Excel? So Walter, I've just tried to put the Excel in there just in case somebody didn't have it from an email from me. It's just exactly the same one. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but if not, don't worry, I'll send everything out at the end. If you just want to follow, so obviously it's going to be difficult for you guys to look at Zoom and the spreadsheet at the same time, then afterwards I'll be able to send out the question, the answer, and also the recording and the pre-work for next week as well. Super. If there are any questions, just pop them in the chat box and I'll pick them up as we go through. But if not, let's start to have a look. So in your spreadsheets part of your exam, it's going to be split into 2 tasks. So they're normally labelled 2.1 and 2.2. I'm going to be doing 1 task for you, but this is very similar to how it's laid out in the exam. So in the way that it's laid out, you will have lots and lots of requirements that you need to go through, and you'll need to read them and make sure that you have answered each of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it as if I was doing the exam. So if I was actually doing the exam, how would I focus on this? And I'm going to follow through that information and just pop into the chat box if you have got any questions and you want me to go back through everything. If you don't mind doing it on the chat box though, that would be appreciated, just because if other people do talk on the line, it does mean it makes it quite difficult to actually hear people. So let's start off with our first requirement then. So in cells B6 to B34 on our TB tab. Oh, sorry about that, Ellen. I don't know what time you registered. You may have received an email from me. Anybody that registered after 6:30, should have actually, before 6:30, should have received it through email. So try that. But if not, obviously you can go through and have a look again. So we're going to be using the TB file then. So we're going to be using this trial balance file that we've got here. And the first requirement says to us, in the cells B6 to B34, use data validation to allow users to pick from a list of SPL or SOFP. Mark each account as after the P&L or SOFP in the account column type, and it just tells you there which each of those means if you weren't aware of it. So on this trial balance tab, this was blank for you guys. I've just filled them in for the rest of these requirements just to save some time. But what it was asking you to do is to use data validation to have a drop box. And I'm just going to show you as the first thing that we do today, how we actually insert that drop box so that we can actually be able to have a selection. So if I click on the tab, if I go to the data tab and onto data validation, it brings me up this box. Now this is recording, so if you can't have it in front of you while we're going through it, you can go back and do this at your own time. So if you go on to change any value to a list, it gives you this box down here called source, which allows you to type in all of the options that you want to be in the drop down box. Now it's asked me to use SPL or SOFP, and what I can do is I can type these in with a comma in between the words, so SPL and a comma, SOFP, and as I press OK, you will now see that this box is going to slightly change in the way that it's laid out. So as I press OK, we can now see an arrow at the side of this box, and when I press my drop down, it's now got some options there as to how I can pick either SPL or SOFP. There are some slightly different ways of being able to do that. So if you think to yourself, absolutely, Sarah, you're absolutely right. If you think to yourself, well, I've written it over here and I've used that, that's absolutely fine. So there's always more than one way to do something in Excel. As long as it comes out to the same answer, that's absolutely spot on. I'm just going to show you one way to not make it too complicated for people that haven't seen this before. So if you do it in a different way and it gets the same answer, spot on. Don't change it, stick with what you know. We don't need to make it any more complicated than the exam already is. But if you haven't seen how to do it, this is how I'm going to show you for this way. So good question, keep them coming. So for the account type, I'm just going to drop it down. And where do I put my accruals? Is that in my profit and loss or my statement of financial position? Perfect, absolutely. It goes into my statement of financial position. Well done there, guys. A couple of different ways of spelling that, but you're absolutely right. Jill, it may be that you've got a slightly different version of Excel. If you go into the search bar, there should be a search bar somewhere on your Excel version. It depends on what version you've got. If you go into the search bar and search data validation, it should show you where you can find it. And that is available to you when you do sit your exam. So if you did need to do that in the exam, if it was a different version to the one you've practiced on, that would be available as it is part of the Excel program. So unfortunately, I can't show you any other old versions, so you just have to play around to try and find it. Hopefully you can. If not, send me some screenshots on email and I'll talk you through it and we'll try and work it out together. So I'm not going to go through each of these with you, these ideas, because this is recap. This is recap from your financial statements module. So hopefully you should be comfortable with these. But I'm just going to scroll down, and if anybody has got any questions on how they would have classified any of these, please shout up, because unfortunately it's going to take me quite a long time to go through them, and I want to make sure that we get to the end of the spreadsheet. So as we go through, if anyone thinks, well, I've classified those slightly different, give me a shout and I'll be able to go through them. But as part of your homework, make sure that you did classify each of these requirements, whether they would go into the profit and loss or the statement of financial position. And if you did get any of those wrong, make sure you do pop it onto your revision before you get through to your real exam. Hopefully that's okay to everybody. But let's check, have we done everything in that first task? In cells B6 to B34, so if I just check B6 to B34, have I gone down and classified each of them from the profit and loss or the statement of financial position? It looks like I have, and I've done each of these on a Dropbox. And just to let you know, guys, if I was to copy this, I can actually scroll down and I can actually paste it and all of the information would go through. So Sarah's saying you put profit and loss, so the accruals would go into your statement of financial position. I don't know how you've studied in the past, Sarah, but if you are a first and tuition student, in your notes, you have actually got in the recap version an overview of what goes into each of these statements. If you want to drop me an email about how you can practice that. Oh, that's perfect then. You put profit, a statement of profit. Statement of profit and loss, they're the same thing. So SPL is statement of profit and loss. SOFP is the statement of financial position. I put the data validation into B6. So it said pick from SPL or SO. Oh, sorry, I understand your question now, Sarah. Sorry. It does say pick from SPL or SOFP. But I do understand that it does say there, mark them as either P&L or SOFP. So I don't think the marker would actually penalise you for that, but just to try and carefully read the question. Sorry, I misunderstood your question there. So that's obviously not as bad. You do understand the requirements. Good, but I'm happy with that. I've done my first requirement. So what I would do in the exam is I would then make that yellow to say that I've got all of the marks and I've actually been able to fulfill all of those requirements. The next requirement, Sarah, you can copy it all the way down. I wouldn't edit every cell, it's going to take you ages. So you can actually copy it all the way down, and then what you would have to do is just go through each one and just classify it correctly as you go through. So absolutely, I wouldn't make sure that I do each one individually. What have I just done there? Nothing, I don't think. Wouldn't go through and make sure you do each one individually. It's going to take you ages. I'd just copy them down. You've got to find these little tricks to try and just make it a bit quicker in the exam. Super. Let's have a look at the next part then. So using the sum function, total all of the columns in row 35. So this should be a nice one for us. Obviously, you can use auto sum here if you'd like to, or you can type it in. Either way is absolutely fine. So I'm just going to pop equal sum, and I'm just going to highlight all of my debit side, and I'm going to press enter, and that gives me a total. And I'm going to copy that figure, and I'm going to paste it onto my credit side. And I've now got a sum that adds up my debit and adds up my credit. And the great news is they equal, which is brilliant. So we know that they should always equal when we do our sums. So I've now done all of my requirements for that second poppet there. Number 3, obviously just stop me if you've got any questions, otherwise I'll keep going. Format all currency figures to the nearest pound. Data needs to be clearly shown in each cell. So they're going to ask you in lots of different ways how to format. You're going to need to make sure that you really carefully read the requirements in the question. So if we have a look on our TB, it's asking format all of these to the nearest pound. So if I just highlight all of the numbers that are currency, I'm going to use this currency formatting over here, and I'm going to press pound, but you'll notice it gives me 2 decimal places. Now that asked me to the nearest pound, so I'm just going to use this box here to decrease my decimal. Again, there is lots of different ways that you can do that. You can use this drop down, you can use your number formats. If you do it in a different way but get back to the right answer, that's absolutely fine. The only thing we don't want to be doing is going into the cell and type in a pound sign in front of each of these. That's not what they want you to do. They want you to use formatting to make sure you've shown it in the correct. It's just the way that it sits, Becky. So Becky's just asked, what is the difference between currency and accounting? It's just the way that it sits. And to be honest, nothing. As long as it looks how it does, it doesn't matter. So you can play about on the exam, and that's absolutely fine. Absolutely. Another question there, I right click and click on format cells. That is no problem whatsoever. So the thing with Excel is there's about 100 ways to do all of the same thing. So if I do something different, but your answers look the same, you don't need to worry about it. You can just stick with your way of doing it, and that's absolutely perfect. What I'm trying to do is give people that don't know how to do it a way that they can use going forward. So it depends on what you've done in the past. So great questions there. Good. I think I'm happy with that. So I've now formatted all of my currency figures. I've put them to the nearest pound. And now we've got to do an if statement. So if statements can be quite problematic when we do these, when we start doing them straight away. So it may be that you've been doing them for a while and you find them quite easy, but it may be that you've never seen one before. So I'll go through it tonight. If you go home and you look at it and you think, oh, I really, really don't know how to do that, you can always send me an email and I'll be happy to be able to go through it with you and help you to be able to crack that. So what we've been asked to do, we've been asked to insert an if statement into cell E35 to show balanced if the debits and credits columns are equal, or to show check if they are not. So let's have a look at what that's asking us to do. So it's asking us in this cell here, E35, to check if these two columns here are the same. Now we can see they are. So we want our answer to come out as balanced. But what we need to do is we can't just write that in there. We need to use an if statement to be able to bring us back to that figure. Now, if I just type in here then, I'm going to do it typed and then I'm going to show you how you can actually use this function button up here. So if you're new to it and you haven't used it very often, this may be something that you may want to use to practice before you get comfortable to be able to type it. I personally find it easier to type, but I've been using Excel for a long time and I know some people find it when they're first starting off, using this function button is a little bit easier and a little bit quicker for them. So I'm going to type in equals if, and I'm going to open up my bracket. Now, hopefully you guys can all see this comfortably on your screen, but when it opens up that bracket, you can see that there's actually some instructions here as to what they're asking you to do. Now, the first instruction, it says, what is the logical test? Now, the logical test is what are you trying to make sure works? So what we are trying to do is to say, is the debit and the credit column equal? So my logical test in this box is going to be, is my figure in C35 equal to my figure in D35? So just stop me if you've got any questions on that. So I'm saying for my logical test, is C35 equals to E35? And it says, if it is equals, I want it to write balanced. If it's not equal, I want it to write check. Now, when I do a comma, you will then see that it is highlighted this box here that says value if true. So if it's true, I would like it to write the word balanced. Now, because this is a word, I have to write quotation marks around it. So if I wanted it to state a number, I could just write that number in. But because I want it to have a word, I need to use quotation marks and I want to write the word balanced. So if that is true, if C35 is the same number as D35, I would like you to write the word balanced. If I pop a comma in here again, you will notice it then highlights the value if it's false. Now the question says to me, if it's false, what would you like it to write? It would write check as I open it up. Sarah, it may be that you've got an old version of Excel. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to actually find another way to do that in a minute. So just let me know if it doesn't work when I show you the alternative way. I think I should be able to solve that for you in a second. So here we've now got, if these two equal, then write the word balanced. If they don't, I'd like you to write the word check. And as I close off my bracket, as I press enter, happy days, it writes the word balance. And I can just check whether it's working. So if I just delete that £24,000, it now shows that they don't equal, and that word has changed to check. So you can always double check your formula. And the great thing with using these in the exam is that if that does say check, you know you've generally done something wrong. So generally it will say whether you've done something wrong there, and you can go back and just check those balances. Let me just quickly read that message from Becky. So around the value of true stroke false, there's brackets. When you type them in, you didn't use brackets around them. You don't need bracket. Oh no, you don't need brackets when you're doing it. What that's doing is it's telling you what each bit after the comma needs. I see what you mean. So it tells you after the comma what's going to happen. So the brackets just say that's the next section. And as you go through it and you press comma, yeah, absolutely good question. It's just separating them. Perfect. Now I'm just going to show you how we use this formula builder. Now I use it the wizard because on old versions of Excel, it used to be an old man like Gandalf with a little hat, but it's not called the wizard anymore. It is actually called the formula builder, thought function arguments, but I do still call it the wizard. Now, if you're unsure or you're quite new to do this, if we just delete that, if I use this function button, and so Fran, absolutely, it's a completely personal thing to people. I prefer to type them. Some people prefer to use the function box, and you just need to find out which way works best for you. So if this was empty and I wanted to use the function box, if I was to press this, if I find if in my descriptions, or I copy find if here and search for the function, you'll see what it does is it brings up each of these logical tests to be able to do it. So D has asked, would the formula builder be able to use in the real assessment? Absolutely. It's part of Excel, it's part of the Excel function, so you absolutely would be able to do it. Good. I've just seen that message there from Ellen. Some colleges disable the function in the Synoptic. I wasn't aware of that because it's part of Excel and it's something that is available to you to be able to use. So if you're not a first in tuition student, you have to talk to your college about that because I wasn't aware of that because it is actually a function that is available to you. So now if we're using this box for our logical test, we can now pop into here, is C35 equal to D35? If it's true, I'd like it to write the word balanced. If it's not, I'd like it to write the word check. So now you can see what it's done is it's actually built that for you. So you don't have to know where the brackets go. You don't have to enter all of the commas. If you look in the function box behind, it's done all that hard work for you. And you can actually see down here that it tells me my result is that it's balanced. So as I press OK, the word balance pops into that function there. So there's two different ways that you can do it, and you can practice and work out which way works best for you. But we've done that now. We've looked at our if statement. We've had lots of great questions on that if statement, and I'm comfortable there that I've actually been able to fulfill that requirement. Now let's move on then to our next bit. Now this is quite a large section of your exam, and what I've done is I've been a little bit mean to you actually. I haven't given you a layout, and the reason I haven't done that is because I do know that AAT have asked you to do this from scratch on a previous exam. So if you didn't know how to lay this out, that needs to be something that you pop onto your revision list before your exam about the format of a profit and loss account. We're going to go through it now. But do make sure that you are really, really comfortable. Good, I'm glad that you like that, Ellen. Good. So on the profit and loss tab, using the TB worksheet, we're going to prepare a profit and loss statement. We need to use an appropriate format based on your previous studies. Now that doesn't mean it needs to look identical to what I've done. It means it needs to look close. So it can be slightly different and it can be absolutely fine. So don't panic about that if they look slightly different. They look different in the real world and that's absolutely fine. We've got some more information though that we need to include. you should use cell referencing to the TB worksheet where appropriate and use the bold function to help illustrate your answer. In cells A2 to D2, centre and bold the title, format all currencies to the nearest pound, and we need to make sure that we include these policies. So sales revenue will include sales returns, purchases should include purchase returns and carriage inwards. And you should use formulas to calculate these answers. Make sure you always read the full requirement of each section, because it could be that something down here changes how you do something at the beginning of your answer. So make sure you read all of it, then we go back to the beginning and then we start to actually do the task. And we only sign it off and make it yellow right at the last possible moment when we've actually checked that we've done everything back. Because if we miss something, we're just going to throw away some easy marks. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is in cell A2 to D2, I'm going to actually pop this title in there. And I'm going to be lazy. I'm just going to copy it. So I'm going to copy the title. So I've just pressed copy. And in my profit and loss in A2, I'm just going to paste it. So I can't be bothered to write it out. I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to have to keep copying and going backwards and forwards between those two lines. So I'm just going to copy it over, and then I'm going to actually go through, and I need to A2 to D2. I need to merge my cells, and I'm going to bold it, and I'm going to center it. So what I'm just going to do is make that a little bit bigger so that I can read all of that information. So I've done that first part of the task. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to actually add, it doesn't ask me for this, but I'm actually going to add a filter onto my trial balance so that I'm just going to show all of the data that goes into the profit and loss, because it's only asked me to prepare that. So the statement of financial position data for this task, I don't need. Now, when I did do this with my class, I made them do both. Absolutely. You can do anything that adds to it, but what I would just make sure you do is before you save it, you do just take the filter off so that they can actually still check it as a marker. But you absolutely can do it. That's absolutely fine. So now I know that all of these are the ones that I need to deal with for my profit and loss account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to prepare it. So this will look different for everybody because you're preparing this yourself. It's going to be in slightly different lines. It's going to be in slightly different information. But what you want to make sure is that it roughly looks the same. You've got the correct and appropriate subheadings and that your profit is correct right at the bottom. So I'm going to start off. If we had more time, I'd get you guys to shout what comes next. But I'm conscious of the fact that we've only got just over 15 minutes. So I am going to go through this, but just pop in the chat box if you want me to go back and go through anything again. So I'm going to start off with my revenue figure. Now, there was some information about this revenue. It says that sales revenue needs to include sales returns. And I need to make sure that I use a formula to calculate that answer. So if I'm going to put my revenue over here, I'm going to put equals, because it tells me to do sales referencing. Joe, unfortunately you can't. You have to, in the exam, you will have to scroll backwards and forwards. The only way that you could maybe do it would be to copy this over to this side and use it as you go through. But unfortunately, in the actual exam, there isn't. The only way you'd be able to use a split screen, Sarah, is if it was on two different worksheets. You'd have to copy it onto another worksheet, otherwise it wouldn't work. So you could copy it in if you wanted to, but really they do want you to be able to scroll backwards and forwards and make sure. But right at the end, we're going to go through and make it yellow to make sure that we have actually done everything. Good, so for my revenue then, I'm going to press equals. And on my TB, I'm going to find my revenue figure, which is sales, which is in D30. And I need to take off my sales returns because that's what it told me to do. You might not always have to do that, but the question asked you to pop that in. And we should have a figure of 116,400 for my revenue. Next, in my profit and loss, I need to deal with my cost of sales. So the way that we calculate cost of sales is that we have opening inventory plus purchases less closing inventory. So we need to find where these figures are sitting in my TB. And if you remember, there were some instructions that we need to do for our purchases. So purchases should include purchase returns and carriage inwards. So when we get there, we need to make sure that we do an adjustment to calculate for those two other items. So equals my inventory. Opening inventory, 3,110. My purchases then, so I need to find three figures there. I need to find my purchases, which is in C27. I need to take off my purchase returns, which is in D28. And I need to add on my carriage inwards, which is that £200 there, which is in C12. So the marker wants to be able to see that you have clearly done a work in there to calculate those three figures. Closing inventory, we equals that to our trial balance. So closing inventory sitting in D14, 3,525. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to do a subtotal for my cost of goods sold. And I'm actually going to make that bold. You don't have to have done that, but I'm just going to do that. Jill, it's absolutely up to you. I'm going to show you a different way of being able to do it in a minute. I'm going to actually link it for the expenses. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. The only reason you would have to do one way is if the exam told you to do it. So if the exam told you to copy and paste, you would have to do that. But there is no requirement there, so it's completely up to you how you do it. So for our cost of goods sold, I need to do a sum. So I'm going to equals my opening inventory plus my purchases less my closing inventory, which is going to give me £61,053. Super. Okay. Next part then, we are then going to take off our expenses. And this is where I said, Jill, I'm going to show you a different way of being able to do it. So I'm going to take off my less expenses. And up until now, I have been typing it in. What I'm now going to do, because they're quite a bit longer, is I'm going to show you a different way that you can do it. And it doesn't matter which way you use in the exam, unless, like I say, they tell you a specific way to be able to do it. Well, Sarah, you're absolutely right. My apologies. Thank you very much for that. You're absolutely right. You should put gross profit at this point before you take off the figure. D, you don't need to put brackets around it, but if you did, that's fine. You would just do a sum here. Either way is absolutely fine how you present it. It doesn't matter. So for your gross profit, we're going to take our revenue, take off our cost of goods sold. Thank you very much, Sarah. I missed out that line. So 53,347. And now I'm going to take off my expenses. Super. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down my TB and I'm going to link them to these descriptions and to my figures in my debit column. So the first one that I've got, if I have a look, is my allowance for doubtful debt. So as I press enter, the figure goes in there automatically. So it stops me from having to actually type it. So it's just going to save me a bit of time in my exam. C8 is 180. It's up to you though, unless it asks you to do it, you can actually just type it out. I can now have a look for my next expense. So if I go down to my depreciation charge for my computers, I can link that one through. 180. My next expense that I've got is my depreciation for my equipment, and that is £412. Next one in my line, I've then got my General admin expenses, 4,650. I have then got my printing costs of 814. My next expense is my postage of 27. And my final one is my wages and salaries of 24,000. So what I've done is I've used referencing. So I've used cell referencing. So I've linked them over so it does show that data. And what it's just done is it's just saved me from having to type them out. I can either leave them like that or I can paste special values if I didn't want them to stay as linked cells. So you'd have to read what the question's asking you, but if it doesn't give you any information, then absolutely up to you as to how you do it. So you could then copy and paste it, special values, so it would then be a word, or you could leave it linked if it didn't ask you to do anything. So it's just a way to try and save some time in the exam. I know this exam can be quite time pressured when we do actually get there. So a couple of little lines left that I've got to do on my calculation. Total expenses equals sum, add up my expenses, 30,210. I'm going to make that bold again, just because I think it's nice to highlight my subtotals. But as long as you're using it in appropriate places, then you've answered what the question has asked you for. And the final line that we've got is net profit or loss for the year, where I'm going to take my gross profit, take off then my total expenses, which will give me a profit for the year of 25,146. Now the chances are in the exam you've done something wrong and your profit won't be that number. That's the same in every exam. You will never know whether you've done that correctly or not. So go with it and have it in. If you've added underlining, that's absolutely fine. So that's absolutely fine. In this question, it didn't specifically tell you how to do it. So as long as you're using an appropriate format, it was fine. In the exam, if it told you to do something specifically, then you would need to obviously make sure that you did follow all of those requirements. But if we just check that it didn't, we are going to be preparing a profit and loss statement. We've done that. We've used an appropriate format. We've used cell referencing where appropriate, and we've used bold to help illustrate the answer. We've got a title merged in A2 to D2. Rebecca, no, you wouldn't get any, if you didn't underline, the question doesn't ask you to underline. It doesn't ask you to underline anything, so you wouldn't lose any marks. If it did ask you to underline, then yes, you would lose marks. But if you added it in, because it tells you to make it the most appropriate, that would be fine in these questions. So it's just where it specifically tells you that you need to make sure that you do follow those requirements. Format all of our currency figures, perfect. We need to make sure we account for these policies. So sales revenue less sales returns, we did that. Purchase less purchase returns and carried inwards, we did that. And we used formulas to calculate each of our answers. So I'm really comfortable there that I have fulfilled all of those requirements. And I've reread them just to make sure I forgot one and I had to go back and re-look at it. Perfect. Right, let's have a look at the last two requirements then. So it's very typical in this exam, either in part 1 or part 2, that you'll have to write an email or write some text. So it's the first time generally that students have been asked to do this, because we don't in any of the other level 3 modules have to write. So it's typically something that people do get quite worried about, but I don't want you to. So this one's quite a lot of requirements, but what it's asking you to do is just basically explain some of the technical knowledge that you've just used to create that profit and loss. And it's given you a heading. Now, if you've written something completely different in your email, but you've still answered the question, you will still get marks. And if you're really unsure about this, feel free to email it over to me. I'll have a read and I'll give you some feedback on what you've actually written. So if that's something that you're worried about, please feel free to do that. That's absolutely not a problem. And I'm going to try in most weeks pop something written into these so that we can get lots and lots of practice in, because it's something that you generally haven't seen very often because you haven't done it before. So the owners of Jordan Co. have contacted your, would this question appear in part 1? No, Emily, it'll be in part 2 because this is spreadsheets. But you could be asked to actually do one of these in part 1. But obviously it won't be on a spreadsheet. It would be written on typing into a text box. So this part you could have something very, very similar, but obviously part 2 will only be in the spreadsheets. So the owners of Jordan Co. have contacted your company to ask some questions regarding your workings. Using the email tab, compose an email to explain the following. How much profit has been made by the company? How profit is calculated? What is included in the sales revenue figure? What is included in the purchases figure? And what is the difference between gross and net profit? Now, I've filled this out already because I wanted to, I changed my workings. Let me just change that number. I wanted to obviously give you the opportunity to mark your own at home. So I'm just going to read what I've written. Yours will look different. It absolutely will. If you can see that you've answered all of these questions, then fantastic. If you're unsure, then feel free to email me and I'm happy to have a look at it for you. So to the owners of Jordan Co., you always in an email have an introduction. So you've got your AAT to the owners and it's called profit and loss account. So to the owners, I understand that you have requested some information around the calculation of your profit and loss, and I would be happy to help you. Becky, so you just said, did the version you email us have the box format or did I make it myself? It has a blank format. So I filled it in, but it was blank. So you should have something blank in the exam for you to fill in. For the year ended the 30th of June, Jordan Co. has made a profit of $25,146. Profit is calculated by taking the revenue that's been made by a company and deducting all expenses that has incurred for that period. Including your sales figure are the sales that you've made for the period and deducted all sales revenue returns that have been sent back to the company. To calculate your purchases figure, this includes all purchases that the business has made, less any purchase returns and carriage inwards cost. Finally, you have requested information around what is the difference between gross and net profit. Gross profit is the amount of profit that a company generates from selling its product. It is calculated by deducting the cost of sales from revenue. This leaves you with the profit generated directly from selling the product of your organisation. Net profit is the total profit of a company. It is calculated by deducting all remaining day-to-day running expenses from the gross profit and shows how much the profit the company has made overall. Now, yours won't sound the same as that because you're a different person. But what you can do is you can go through and make sure that each of the requirements you have explained. Nothing is overcomplicated here. You've just really explaining what goes through that profit and loss account and those different sections. So when I email this out to you tomorrow, when I've obviously got the recording link that's come through, you'll be able to review this. And if you look at yours and you're not sure whether you've answered those questions, I would be happy to give you some feedback if you did want to email me. But that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. This is quite a big email. So Kelly's asked how many marks it would be. I think personally that it will be a mark for each of these. So I think about 5 marks for that level of email. If it was a smaller email, it would be worth less. But I think for this one, you'll be looking about 5 marks, which is quite a few marks. So as long as you've answered each of those requirements, you would be able to obviously get each of those marks. Last thing then, let's just make sure that we are comfortable with this. Now, generally in the Spreadsheets exam, you will have to do a print preview. So you need to make sure that your email could be printed onto one page only using a landscape view. Take a screenshot of the print preview of the worksheet and paste it into a new worksheet and call this screenshot. So what they're looking for you to do is go for your email, go to print, and as you can see, it's shown on 3 pages and it's portrait. So there's lots and lots and lots of different ways that you can do this. So if you've done it differently, don't worry about changing anything over, because there is different ways to do it. Now, the way that I would do it is I'd start off on landscape. That's just popped it like that into my box. And what I'm going to do is on my scaling, I'm going to fit the sheet to 1 page. Now, that's how I would do it in this exam. It's slightly different. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. And like I say, if you do it some way differently at work or you do it differently at all, don't worry, don't change it for the purpose of this exam. That will be absolutely fine for you to be able to do that. Now I'm just going to take a screenshot. So I'm just going to press print screen. Now this is actually going to have my face in it because my face is actually on my screen at the moment. So apologies for that. But as I escape, it asks me to paste it into a new worksheet that you can see. It's obviously got my face on there, but it does show that it's on 1 page. No, it doesn't, because my face is in front of it. And actually, it does show that it is on 1 page overall. So you're absolutely welcome. It is something that people do struggle. And what I'll do is every week, I'll try and do a screenshot and I'll do it in a slightly different way to show you lots of different ways to be able to do it. So each week we'll do a screenshot and we'll use a slightly different format to be able to actually show that overall. Last bit, we just need to rename this then. Screenshot it asked for, didn't it? Screenshot. And I think that we have now done all of our requirements. So as I've highlighted that, we've done the email's been printed onto 1 page using landscape, take a screenshot and rename it our screenshot. Super. Now, if you do need to drop off, thank you very, very much for being here on our call tonight. Hopefully you found it useful. Any feedback that anyone wants to email to me would be really, really appreciated. So I've seen if you have got any questions, stay on the line. I'm not running off anywhere. I will answer any questions that anybody does have. But if not, hopefully I will see you next week. So there was a question, Emily, are these sessions only for 4 weeks? There is 5 weeks of these. I was hoping that after that 5th week, you would be able to actually set your exam. But I'm not sure whether that's going to be the case, but I'm actually going on maternity leave after that 5th week. So I can't actually do any extra sessions, but I think First Intuition would try and actually put some more on for you if that was something that we did have a need for. Let's just see if there's any other questions there. Oh, brilliant. Really great to have that good feedback. Thank you very much, guys. Do I have the screenshot? Do I have to upload the screenshot somewhere? Not if it doesn't ask you to. So all that asks you to do is just to paste it onto that 1 tab. Generally, that's what they'll ask you to do, just to put it onto that screenshot. Let's just check if there's any others. Claire, you've asked if there'll be a download you can rewatch. Tomorrow, I will be sending out a link. So what will happen is it takes a little while for Zoom to prepare the link. And I think we're actually going on YouTube as well for this. So there will be a link that I will send out tomorrow. So tomorrow I will send out the link. I will send out a blank spreadsheet for anyone who wants to do it again. I'll send out the answers and I will also send out the pre-work for next week. So everything will always be going on. What else are we looking at? Let's see if there's any other questions. Do we have to book every week? No, you don't. So once you're on there now, unless you take yourself off, you will receive the emails every single week. So you don't need to book every week, you're on there. So that's absolutely fine. Let's have a little read what else we've got on here. Thank you very much. Maria, absolutely. I'll email the link out to you tomorrow so you can do it. Jill, bear with me just 1 second and I will show you that. But what I did was I pressed print screen on my keyboard to give that a go and then let me know if you're not sure. Before you upload, would you remove the highlight? I wouldn't bother personally. It doesn't matter, but if you have got time, you can do, but there's no reason why you would need to. Rebecca's asked, how many marks does spelling and grammar account for? To be honest, in this exam, it isn't completely brilliant, so you don't need to really do it. Try and get it as much as you can. They might take a couple of marks away from you if it is on an email, but generally, as long as you're fulfilling the requirements, you should be okay on that part there. Geraldine, sorry about that. I did send it out about 6:40, but you must have just missed it. But you will be on my email tomorrow with absolutely anything on there. So if you have got any questions, please get in touch with me. That's absolutely fine. Becky's asked, ethics, will we only be recapping at the start with the quiz? We'll see how we go. So next week, we'll stick to the same format where we'll do ethics at the beginning and then we will do a spreadsheet. But I might throw some ethics into the email. I might show some extra little bits in there. What I'm going to do at the end of next week is actually ask you guys if there's stuff that you do want to go through. So if there is something specific on ethics, if you let me know, I'll make sure I do pop it into the information. Claire, absolutely, you'll get all of that tomorrow, no worries. Manpreet, you've asked which Excel version is using the exam. That will depend on your spreadsheets that are available at the centre you take your exam. So if you're taking it at First Intuition Chelmsford, they're all the same version that I'm using here. If you are taking it at a different centre, it will depend on what Excel version they do have. So you may need to look at that there. Yes, everything will be emailed to you. Can you use the help button? If you're talking about the search bar, yes, you can. If you're talking about something else, just let me know. If it's outside of Excel, then you wouldn't be able to. Zoe, you've asked, do you just save the spreadsheet at the end of the exam? It will give you instructions to do that. So what we have at Chelmsford First Intuition is that you will save them on your desktop and then you will be able to upload them to the AAT version. So we save them onto a file and then you will upload them at the end of the exam onto the AAT workbook. So it might be slightly different at your centre, so just make sure you have a little check. Jennifer, I'll have a look at that if the diary invitations, apologies for that. Kinga, yes, absolutely, as long as you've registered, which you would have, otherwise you wouldn't have been in here. Or we'll get everything sent out tomorrow, and if you've got any questions, you can email me. Emily, will the sessions cover the written ethics in part 1? Now you've asked for them, absolutely. I'll write it down. So the written ethics, they will cover whatever you guys want. So if you let me know what you want, I will make sure that we pop it in there. So if you would like the ethics written sections covered, I will add it into one of our sessions. So now you've asked me, I will make sure that's on there. So I've only actually written next week. So if there is anything, if you let me know, I'll be able to add something in. How do you get this task again to practice? Like I've said, I'm going to send everything out to you tomorrow, so you'll be able to do it again. Yes, absolutely. All of these things will be sent out in email tomorrow. So you will get the link to this recording. You will get a blank spreadsheet to practice. You will then get the answers and the pre-work for next week. Are both tasks similar in terms of difficulty wise? It depends on your skill set really. So if you're really good at management accounting and one of them is a management accounting task, you're obviously going to find that easier than the other one. So obviously have a little look there. Are the emails on Dropbox? I'm going to put all of these files on Dropbox so you can always do it, so that's fine. Always difficult to identify the ethical principle in real case scenarios. That's going to go on my list too. Perfect, that's on there. So that's absolutely fine. Anything you want on, let me know and I will make sure that we do include it in these sessions. Do you need to register again? No, you don't. Now you're on here unless you take yourself off. That was fine. You wish the session was longer. I almost do now as well. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it. So that's why we're doing the pre-work before we go in. That's absolutely fine. Good. Good. I'm glad you feel motivated. Written part of ethics. Good. Oh, you're independent. Good. Ask the centre. Absolutely. I can only ask what we do at Chelmsford. Good. Glad that you enjoyed it. Pivot charts, they're not going to be in next week because I've written it, but the week after, they'll be in there. So a pivot chart will be in there for the week after. So that's absolutely great. Any tips on reviewing management accounting before Synoptic? Jola, where do you study? Do you study at First Intuition or do you study somewhere else? Because I've got lots of tips. I'm actually teaching it at the moment. You're independent. Okay, so if you want to email me, I'd be happy to talk about that with you, about what you would look at. So if you want to email me, I'll have a little chat with you about it offline, if that's all right. Conditional formatting, no worries. I think that is in next week, but if it's not, it will be in the week after. Spreadsheets on my computer doesn't have all the options like forecasting. Okay, so that is obviously a problem in terms of different ways. Next week, we are actually looking at GoalSeek. So if you haven't seen that before, we will be having a look at it. So see how you go at home, and obviously email me if you've got some issues. It may just be that you've got an old version. So you can actually download a free version for 30 days of Excel, which will be the most up-to-date version. So I can send you a link if you want to email me. If you do have any issues this week about using GoalSeek, I'll send you a link to be able to download a free version, and you may be able to go through that. Oh, thank you very much, Sarah. That's lovely. I'll see you next week. Someone's gone off of mute. Let me just pop them back onto mute. Let's have a little look. So HLOOKUP and VLOOKUPs, we are definitely doing a VLOOKUP next week, but I will get a HLOOKUP in the week after. No worries. Relative and absolute cell referencing, yeah, that will definitely come up, so I'll make sure that's in there. And what if analysis, GoalSeek is in there next week, so you'll definitely see a GoalSeek in next week's. I've got that in there already. So hopefully that's answering your questions. If I've just missed anyone's questions, just pop them into the chat box again. I do apologise, there was about 100 messages that just came up there at the same time, so if there is any extra questions, pop them in. But if anyone does want anything extra, please feel free to email me. Like I say, I have written next week already, but after next week I haven't, so I can pop anything in that you guys do want. Great, you're all very, very welcome. If there are any more questions, I'll wait around for a few moments, but if not, we're all done for tonight. Thank you very much, and see you all next week at 7 o'clock. Thank you.